Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Pane Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Bridaduhe Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti yam samagaha Dhyanavastita dadkatena manasa Pashyanti yam yoginaha Yasyantam navidhusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So we are coming to almost the second last lecture of the 8th chapter. And as I said last time too, in this chapter, we are seeing a shift from the first 6 verses where we are looking at now what is the relation of myself with the world, and then from the world to beyond. So almost from the 15th chapter up to the 22nd verse, and today we'll be taking the 23rd and beyond, Sri Krishna is actually comparing the 2 different forms of our human goals. One which is actually a goal which is obtainable by karma, which is how we function in the world. So in the world, for us, materialism sometimes is the goal, and the idea is how can I attain this? And in some sense, karma yoga is what is portrayed in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So in this, you see a variety of actions, both Laukika, that is of the world, and also in terms of Vaidika, what kind of goals can be attained by trying to praying to the gods for a higher, an elevation from where we are, So in this, both scriptural, non-scriptural, secular, religious, all this comes under that goals which are attained by karma yoga. So these can definitely give us the set of results which we are looking for. But then there is also another goal which is beyond all the goals that are obtained by karma, which can be obtained, interestingly enough, only by not focusing on karma at all, not focusing on what is attainable by karma, but by upasana. And that is what the whole section of the second one is all about, and specifically about 8th chapter. So 8th chapter doesn't really go into a lot of jnana yoga, but actually goes into the upasana yoga. And by what do we mean by upasana? Upasana is where the focus is on that absolute Brahman in the form of Ishvara, which is the Saguna form. Nirguna form is Brahman, Saguna form is Ishvara, and the focus on Ishvara, and that is Upasana. And we talked about Upasana being done in two different ways. One is having an idol or having a symbol. So these were what eighth chapter is all about. So I want to just briefly ask any one of you, from your point, how does eighth chapter fit into this Upasana yoga? If anyone wants to share something, I thought we can go over that. So like we talked about, the goal which we attain from Karma Yoga, they're mostly finite. Finite in the sense, I'm looking for something which I can see, feel, hear, etc. It's not working. So, but idea in the eighth chapter is through this Upasana, we're looking for something which is infinite. And this is something that we have to keep in our mind as we're going through this chapter. So here we're not doing any kind of comparison between Jnana Yoga and any other sadhana, but it is between Karma Yoga and Upasana. Okay, so and Lord Krishna wants to really establish that if one has to choose between Karma Yoga and Upasana, then the fruits of the Upasana, this one is definitely a lot more powerful when compared to even Karma Yoga. So he gives in this chapter, just as a summary I wanted to explain also, is he tells, how Karma Yoga can give you a lot of results. And those results, which is covered in the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, it will take you all the way up to Brahma Loka. Okay. You can even become Brahma if you want with that karma. But the key thing to remember is all the fruits of action that we receive from Karma Yoga, they are only finite and they exist within the time and space realm. That is the idea. So when they exist within the time and space realm, they're always very parichinna, we say, desha kala parichinna. That is a word that is used, which is parichinna means limited. Whereas when you practice this upasana yoga, or if you want to call this yoga, upasana yoga, then what happens is one gets all the way up to what we would call this as Krama Mukti. Krama Mukti is where you go up to Brahma Loka, and from Brahma Loka, there is an easy transition to that absolute liberation of moksha. So that is Krama Mukti. And so this Upasana Yoga can take you to that point of it. So Krama Mukti or Ishvara Prapti, we call this. And so this is why eighth chapter is very important. So just a little bit of a recap before we go into that two goals. We talked about last time from, the idea of this attainment of goals up to Brahma Loka. Even though these are not like, a ladder which I can see or feel, but then our rishis, they have actually come out with saying that beyond this loka where we are in right now, which is earth, there is bhuloka, all the way up to Brahma Loka, there is, you can actually go. But again, keeping in mind that each one of these lokas, it's like one of those, the snake and ladder game kind of a thing. You can go up there, enjoy it, and then you're thrown back because we still have so many vasanas for which we are attached to. So because of this, you can actually go all the way up to 14 lokas, which we talked about it before. And keeping in mind that these lokas exist within the time and space realm. And our philosophy pushes us to a place which is even beyond time and space realm. Okay. So idea is that even going up to Brahma Loka, it is not really a permanent status, it is temporary. You keep coming back. And then in 17, we talked about also the fact is that even if you become Brahmaji, and even if you go all the way up to Brahma's time, which is, this 1,000 yugas, is the length of one day, and this 1,000 yugas is the night, and which last time I spoke about how you can actually look into these yugas in terms of human years. This is the amount. So we have a long way if you want to keep on doing things and going. If you want, we can spend a lot of time in this, because even within Kali Yuga, we are only at 5,000 years, and there is still 426,000 years that need to go through. We need to go through. So we could be going up and down in all this time, and still we would not have attained that moksha. So this is what all our karmas will take us. So karmas in terms of, even when we go to the temples and we pray for better things in our life, for example, it will take us and we will be in this realm. So then the question may arise, then, this seems like such a tall goal. Will I ever reach there, right? And so the significance of what we have discussed so far ultimately is the only way that can take us through is by practicing a lot of these values, which we have seen in our Shastras. And probably the most potent of all these values is the fact of Vairagya. Vairagya indicating that we should have the ability to give up everything that we are attached to. Give up, again, it is only having a mental attitude towards giving up, and that is what is Vairagya. So then in Shloka 18, he gives this idea of what happens during Brahmaji's day and night, So he says, from the unmanifest, all the manifested proceed to the coming. So in a sense, when Brahmaji sleeps, right? So the entire world gets folded, just like how for us too, when we sleep, our world gets folded. I have absolutely no idea when I'm in deep sleep that the world even exists. And the second my eyes open, the whole world is again manifested. So, which is why in our philosophy, we really don't talk about like creation, In a sense, there is nothing which is created from the beginning. There is only, and same thing with inventions. There is no such thing as, I'm inventing. Now, in the Western way, we would say, oh, I invented this iPhone or whatever. No, this was always there. What we have done is we have just discovered it, right? So to here, we don't talk about creation, but we talk about manifestation. Manifestation is everything really goes into this unmanifest state. And from this unmanifest state, everything comes out as a manifestation. Just like how I explained, when I go to sleep, the entire world actually goes into a kind of an unmanifest state, and then it again gets manifested. So too with Brahmaji is, if I think that by becoming a Brahma, I'll be liberated, not necessarily, because even for Brahmaji, when he goes to sleep, when his day, there is a sense of unmanifestation, and then there's a manifestation. So this is to give you an idea. And I wanted to put this shloka here from chapter 2, where he had already spoken about this, just comparing the two shlokas here. Avyakta dini bhutani vyaktam madhyani bharata avyakta nidanan yeva tatra ka paridevana. So so this is the only kind of comparison that I'm doing to Jnana Yoga, where Krishna is telling Arjuna that, what are you really worried about? If you recall, Arjuna was worried about the killing his teacher and his relatives. So he's trying to show that, beings are unmanifest in the beginning, they manifest in the middle state, which is, when people awake, and they're unnoticed in the unmanifest at the end. So what is there to grieve about? So just a comparison to this Avyakta portion about manifest and unmanifest, right? So that same idea was repeated in chapter 2 there. Now coming to shloka number 19, then, while we learnt about what this whole process of creation was, where you see all the living and non-livings were manifest and unmanifest, in shloka 19, he elaborates a lot more on this dissolution aspect and in how we all get into this frozen state, if you will, during the night of Lord Brahma, and how we get unfrozen. Okay, so in shloka 19, he says, Bhuta grama sa evayam bhutva bhutva praliyate ratrya game avashaha partha prabhavatyaha ragame. So trying to say that helplessly, I mean, we don't realize we are helpless actually, because we go through a routine as a very normal routine here. But the idea is, we are born again and again helplessly, and we don't realize it. So the universe goes to an unmanifest condition, comes back to manifestation. All the jivas, they all take birth. And so Krishna says that we all have essentially the same destiny with which we went into it. It's not as if when we went to sleep, we came out to be a different person. Not really, because all our vasanas kicks in right away, and we tend to get back to the same thing. So that is up to 19. Now, in shloka number 20, now he talks about the fact that there is hope for us. As much as, after doing all these good things and we're going through all these lokas, and we are still in this state within this time and space, there is something really beyond all this. And that is what he's coming to in this particular verse. If you look at it from a Western point of view, we may say that, well, maybe we're getting back into an energy state. We are getting into we're in the form of energy or something. But then this energy is also within time and space. And so in our philosophy, we are able to show how that we can go even beyond this energy state into something which is beyond. So here he says, so Krishna is assuring Arjuna that there does exist something even higher than this unmanifest state. So there is something which is an unmanifest, manifest. So unmanifest number 1 is the one where we get into that absolutely subtle state. But there is something which is beyond that also. And that is the one which is the permanent, the nitya, the eternal state. And that is what he's saying. Paraha tasmat tu bhavaha anyaha. Anyaha, there is another one. Avyaktaha avyaktat sanatanaha. So that state which is even beyond this unmanifest is that state which is absolutely eternal. Yaha saha sarveshu bhuteshu. That place when all the beings and all the worlds are destroyed. Nashyastu na vinashyati. So this particular unmanifest is not destroyed. So so he talks about that state here. Any questions so far with regard to what is manifest, what is unmanifest, and what is beyond the relative unmanifest? So here I have this, to understand this, so we can, as I explained already, the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. So our material world is basically conditioned by this time and space, which I experience in the waking world. And actually, I experience the same time and space even when I go to sleep, when I start dreaming and everything, right? Actually, the whole world basically gets resolved, and the time and space also, they go into the unmanifest form in this state of dream state or in the deep sleep state. But yet there is something which is there, which allows me to, when I wake up, it tells me that who I was before or who I was in the dream state. So who is aware of that I am aware? How do I know that I'm aware? Because when I actually wake up, I'm able to talk about that blank state. The fact, and this is a very important thing to keep in mind, is that I knew that I was not there, right? Deep sleep state. In deep sleep state, I'm able to talk about the fact that I was not there. So what does that mean? That means that I was there. I was there continuously. So there is that awareness. It's because of that awareness that I was able to say that I was not there, or that blank state, right? So that observer principle, or the Sakshi principle, is that changeless consciousness which actually does not fall within the time-space realm. And that is the most important thing, which is, where the shloka is really coming to say this. And trust me, as much of research that may be going on in the Western side to talk about consciousness, there is no way one can ever get to come up with that kind of an understanding without going into the deep state of mananam and nididhyasanam. That is the only way you can actually come up with this idea, which is the fact that I was there even when the world consisting of time and space was not there. Okay. So that part of it is where Krishna brings about this aspect of the Sakshi Bhava, and he will come up later to talk about how that is that absolute Satyam Jnanam Anantam, So human intellect, so as much as we talk about our mind and intellect, our intellect can only take us to a point which can be within this time space. And until that intellect gets sufficiently sensitized, until it is prepared, we need that absolute form. We need that absolute form in a form. Okay, that is the whole idea of, again, bringing back in this 8th chapter about the need for upasana, because without that upasana, we'll never be able to conceive of that absolute. So you see in this 8th chapter, through the questions that Arjuna has been asking Krishna, and Krishna has been going from, one concept after the other, he's trying to build that series. And just with this last 3 shlokas, he's telling us about, there's so much packed in it, actually. From one point here, he's talking about Karma Yoga, which can take you to some point. And then from Karma Yoga, trying to tell us that everything is within this time-space realm. And to also convince us through that previous example of that unmanifest. How do I know that that unmanifest really exists? That is only through making us first taking that step-by-step approach from Karma Yoga to upasana on a form. And for the form, obviously, we have to have a form which is greater than us. And that is why we, in Hindu philosophy, we have, quote unquote, invented gods. But through, these are not just invention in our minds, but these are itihasas from Ramayana and Mahabharata. We have understood the more pure, rarefied individuals like Krishna and Rama, on whom we can focus, and through this take us beyond. So that's the beauty of looking at this over here in these things. So then in shloka number 21, we start to talk a little more about that unmanifest, that absolute unmanifest form, which is beyond any kind of rebirth. So when Krishna was talking about all the lokas and everything, and how through the merits, through the punyas that we have acquired, how we can actually go to all these levels, there is this question, there is this aspect of rebirth, which will always come, because You will always go to a level, and then after you've exhausted, you come back, you enjoy, go back. So all this are subject to rebirth. But that absolute unmanifest form of Brahman is beyond all this. There is no such thing as rebirth, and that is what he's trying to tell here. Avyo Avyaktokshara ityuktaha tamahu paramam gatim yam prapya na nivartante taddama paramam mama. So trying to show that paramam mama, that dhamma, that abode, which is absolutely paramam, that whoever reaches it, they never return back. Yam prapya na nivartante. And this is a very beautiful quote from the Upanishads itself, where I said last time also, those who go there, they never return at all. Okay, saying that state of the final goal having reached, avyaktaha aksharaha iti uktaha. So what is that state? That state is that avyaktaha, unmanifest. It is aksharaha, absolutely imperishable. That is the highest goal. Yam prapya na nivartante taddhama paramama. That is the state. And in Mandukya Upanishad and all, it goes into a lot of details about explaining, many words to describe that state itself. So to reach that state of that absolute unmanifest Brahman, it doesn't involve travel at all. Travel in the sense, there is nothing that I need to achieve. There is nothing that I need to do as such, because the moment we talk of even doing, all that exists within that time-space realm, right? So that is why he says, Tad mama paramam dhama. That means that state is the absolute state. So everything else, even getting to our devotion to all the gods, Krishna, Rama, everything that exists within time and space, but this state of reaching that absolute Brahman, and again, reaching means not in the word of traveling or reaching that state, but the understanding within ourselves, and to recognize what that state is, and to be. It's that state of being. That state is what he's referring to here. Any thoughts or any questions?
Hariyo.
Yes.
So what we are saying is the Jivatma, the Jiva within ourselves, the Jiva has realized that Atma, Paramatma, and Jivatma are the one and the same. Is that what this sloka is talking about? Is that the
Yes.
realization that there is no difference between me and the Paramatma? We are the same, and I mean, there's no you and I. There is just I. There is just that I of everything is I, because I am part of that world. Kind of. Is that what the sloka is talking about?
It is that Aikyam or Tattvamasi, or that who I am, which you just said, Jivatma, Paramatma, the relationship, everything, that complete relationship is established at that highest level. That is true. That is true. So literally, and that is why the word Vairagya is also such an important aspect, because I have to give up that notion of who I am. When I give up the notion of who I am, I become that. So Jivatma is that state where I'm holding on to the notion of who I am. And a simple example of the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam or anything is very beautifully given in this beautiful example of room space and external space. Okay. So this space in my room is limited by the walls. And what are those walls? They are the notion of who I am. in and through every action, when I do things, when I say that Sunita is doing it, Sunita in the form of manager is doing it, Sunita in the form of mother is doing it, Sunita in the form of sister, whatever, all these koshas, all these layers of conditioning, layers of limitations through which I perform, that is the Jivatma. Right? So this room space is Jivatma, that space when I crush these walls and when I become one with the other is Paramatma. Right? So that is, you absolutely are true on that. And that is, so like I said, this example of room space was this one gives you an idea of yeah. So until I recognize that I am not limited, and that is why I use the word in the beginning of parichinna. Parichinna means limited. Aparichinna is unlimited. I am that infinite. I am not that finite. So finitude in the world requires all these labels through which I perform. So this section is it, so that you're right. So shloka number up to 21, you see how the flow has been, where you go from first understanding what are those worlds in which I have to traverse through, even if I do a lot of good things, a lot of good karmas, still it is nothing but karma. I need to get into the state of upasana. That is very important. So the first 6 chapters karma, the next 6 chapters is all about the description of that infinite. And to describe the infinite, first I have to bring a little bit of a finitude, in the sense I need to elevate myself, just like how in regular world we always have role models who are better than us. So here we are given that opportunity to look up to somebody who's much better than us, who has greater values, who are that embodiment of that absolute state of Brahman. And so it's a step-by-step approach to that state. But in 8th chapter, he doesn't go. There's only a little bit of, he talks a little bit of Brahman here and there, but not much at all. So you see, it's a very practical chapter from that point.
So, Sunita, and also when we mention about that Brahma Loka here, is that we creating something like a creative state? No, this Brahma Loka.
Not
Kriya
that we are
Shakti, Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, kind of a thing.
No, that Kriya Shakti means action, Icha is desire.
Yeah.
All
Brahma
that
Loka.
exists, correct. All that is there for us to traverse up to Brahma Loka. So, but these lokas are not created by us as such. It is there in the total. So think about it from, let's say, from a top-down approach, you have Brahman who's Nirguna, and Brahman takes a form of Ishvara, right, who is a Saguna Brahman. And within Ishvara, of course, you have, there is Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the total mind. Okay. We all have our individual minds, right? So, okay, maybe before I go there, let me explain that, within our own minds, right? I have certain notions of perfection that I can reach. Okay. For example, today I may say that, I'm leading a particular life today where my mind gets disturbed over small things, like, for example, if the temperature goes low, immediately my mind gets disturbed. But I want to shatter that. I want to be a better person. So then I work within myself to be a better person in such a way that I can handle these small things. Now it's the bigger things. So it's all within my mind that I'm trying to go through, and I'm trying to solve this. So too, we are all part of this cosmos. We are all part of that Ishvara principle. And Ishvara is not anywhere else. It's the combined sattvic guna of all of us is what is Ishvara, right?
Yeah.
Now, in that Ishvara, we have a total mind. Now, in this total mind also, we have this levels of evolution. So that is what we're talking about. It's all within the time and space. It is within, it's not a physical area where we are going to.
Oh, okay.
But this Ichcha Shakti and Kriya Shakti, all of them will help us traverse through all these levels.
Yeah. Thank you, Sunita.
So, starting with now what we're going to go through, in shloka number 22, you will see that he starts to, now we're coming to some really practical shlokas, He starts to describe the worlds by which one returns to samsara. Actually, he will come up and he'll talk about two types of paths, okay? One path is where you continuously work hard towards moving upward and upward, again, evolving within ourselves and finally reaching that absolute state of Brahman. The second thing he talks about is the path by which you keep coming back. So that's what he will say. So we will chant the shloka. Purusha saparav partha, Purusha saparav partha, Bhaktya labhyastvananyaya, Bhaktya labhyastvananyaya, Yasyantasthani bhutani, Yasyantasthani bhutani, Yena sarvamidam tatam, Yena sarvamidam tatam. So he's trying to show that the two paths, one is the path of no return, is where Krishna would definitely recommend that we all go towards, even though it's not an easy path. It is, like in Kathopanishad, right? It says Shurasya Dhara. It's like the path of like a razor's edge, At any moment, you're in this world of temptations all the time, right? And we're trying to lead a very spiritual path. How is that possible? So that's why it's a very, very difficult path, But he says that the highest Purusha is absolutely possible. We can definitely attain that absolute state of Brahman, and that should be the highest goal which we should be striving for. So Purusha, meaning that absolute state, Saha Purushaha Saha Paraha Partha. So it is the highest, O Arjuna, Bhaktya Labhya tu Ananyaya. Ananyaya by with by total focus on that goal. That should be the highest goal, and that is definitely possible. And it exists within, where does it exist? Yasya antasthani bhutani. It exists for all of us. It is there. There is no partiality, nothing. It is possible, within whom all beings dwell. And yena sarvam idam tatam. And by whom all this is pervaded. Okay, so that is definitely very much there. So that is really, Krishna is actually giving Arjuna the absolute surety. He says, you just totally, if you're convinced up to now, just focus completely on me. And this is exactly what a lot of the great saints, a lot of the Mahatmas have already done. One has to have this absolute pure Ananya Bhakti for Ishvara. And that Bhakti is not, when I talk about that Bhakti for Ishvara, doesn't mean that I do my prayers in the morning and then I go to work and I exhibit something else. No, he says that same Ishvara exists in everyone. So show that same love to everybody. Yasya antahasthani bhutani. And it is, I am there in everyone. Yena sarvam idam tatam. That absolute thing is pervaded everywhere. So have that love in everything that you do, whether it is, when in the morning I'm just going to have my coffee and I make coffee for my spouse, or, I make breakfast for my child, in there, have this kind of a devotion. Continue to have this devotion when I go to work. Continue to have this devotion when I come back. Everything, continue to do that. And that is what he's saying, And so then one may say, but is it really worth everything that I'm doing? And he's saying, absolutely. You just do this, and you can just have, but the only thing I ask is this Ananya Bhakti. That is all I'm asking. And definitely it is possible. So that is the incentive he gives for us to have that absolute love for everyone. And that is, then he says, Yasya antahastani bhutani. So this Brahman is there in everybody. And I definitely want you to focus on that. And this is not limited only, of course, to my own family and friends and everyone, but from the absolutely the lowest species, all the way from an ant to an elephant, I'm there, and that I need to start focusing on that aspect. And yena sarvam idam tatam, which is I'm pervading everything. So it's not limited only to all these beings, but also both beings and non-living beings, everything I'm there. And so just, come to me in that regard. So he says that, and ananya bhaktya labhyaha. You can absolutely reach that through that absolute devotion. So, having said this, now, he has basically compared so far to our goal, which can be reached by karma and by this upasana, right? So he's made a comparison of that, and he's also, given us a lot of things to think about on how to reach this goal. So far, that has been what has been discussed. So from shloka number 23, now, he will really talk about what happens after the person dies. What are the two paths that is available for both of them? Okay. Yatra kane tvana yatra kane tu anavrittim, sorry, yatra kane tu anavrittim, avritim chaiva yoginah, avritim chaiva yoginah, prayata yanti tam kanam, prayata yanti tam kanam, vakshyami bharatarshava, vakshyami bharatarshava. So he's giving different, he's calling Arjuna by different names, So here he's calling Bharatarshava, oh chief of Bharatas, very, again, trying to convince him. So on a different note, I want to tell you, we just finished this whole webinar series on Bhagavad Gita for contemporary business management and leadership, right? And I'm actually going to put together a book on this, and getting chapters written by all the people who spoke, and I'll probably edit it. But on the same note, my next one is going to be Bhagavad Gita and psychology, actually. And the third one will be Bhagavad Gita and education. Now, the reason I bring that up, but in education, is because, see, here you see how Krishna is trying to entice Arjuna, and by calling him chief of Bharatas, Bharatarshabha, he's trying to say, hey, Arjuna, you are a leader. If you don't do it, who else will do it? So trying to convince him, about the two paths. So he's trying to say, yatra kane tu anavritam, where the yogis never return. So that is one path where somebody is absolutely convinced of the goal. And then avritam cha eva yogina is also the path by which one returns when they're departing from here. Prayataha yanti tam kanam. If you remember, that was one of the most fundamental questions that Arjuna had asked Krishna, what happens to people who die? Where do they go? What is their gati? He asked them, So that's why he's just trying to say these two things here. So in Shloka 24, he explains one of the gatis, which is the Shukla gati, and then the other path also, which is the darker path, So that also he will He's explaining here about where that soul is, not necessarily soul, which is the whole Sukshma Sharira aspect of us, the Jiva. That is also, we call that as Jiva. Actually, Jiva doesn't mean somebody who has, who's a gross body alone. A Jiva has all the 5 things, which is a gross body, this, Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharira, all that is who a Jiva is. So where a Jiva goes, that has been explained in this next verse. Agnish Jyotirah Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. So he explains that bright path which people take, of the 2 paths, one of them he called this is a Shukla Gati. And he talks, Agnihi, Jyotihi, Aha Shuklaha. So fire, light, and Ahaha, the daytime, that's the bright fortnight, which is the Shanmasaha, 6 months of Uttarayanam, of the northern solstice. Tatra Prayataha Gachanti. Following this bright path, those people, Brahma Vidaha Janaha, those who have completely understood that Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Suvarna was pointing out, somebody who has understood that person, when they die, that soul, that Sukshma Sharira, they go through this path of this Shukla Gati, Agnihi, Jyotihi, Shukla Gati, comprises northern this one who's departed, and then they attain. And these are the people who are knowers of Brahman. Okay, I'm just going through the shloka, and we will go into little more details about actually what does this mean really. What does this Shukla Paksha, Shukla Gati mean and everything. So we will see that. And then in shloka 25, he talks about the alternate path. What is that path? That path is the person who have not understood the Jiva Paramatma Aikya. Okay, so after they die, where do they go? So that is also indicated. I mean, again, I'm somebody who has not understood philosophy or anything may say, how did these people really know this? I mean, I can understand some of our younger kids saying that, I just don't get it. I'm sorry, but this doesn't make any sense, Again, we're looking at it from our very limited vision of only what I see, I will believe in, right? But as I've said before too, is the very fact that I have a mind which I cannot see, and I attribute saying that this is my mind, indicates that I'm not just this gross body, but I am something beyond the gross body also, right? So in that sense, our rishis, they have done a lot of this experimentation in their own mind labs. And in their mind labs, they have actually come up with all these theories. And we have to be able to accept it, because there is absolutely no way any physical lab will prove it. And if you look at, there are so many journals out there today which talks about consciousness research, which talks about philosophical research, all this, and they go on and on about this consciousness and everything, which we know can never ever be measured. It's only through the mind, right? So in shloka 25, we will chant this. Dhumo ratristatha Krishnaha, Dhumo ratristatha Krishnaha, Shanmasa Dakshinayanam, Shanmasa Dakshinayanam, Tatra Chandramasam Jyotihi, Tatra Chandramasam Jyotihi, Yogi Prapya Nivartate, Yogi Prapya Nivartate. So he says the second path, which is, he calls this as Chandramasam, the dark path of lunar light. Dhumaha. So that path has Dhumaha, Ratrihi, smoke, nighttime, and it is Krishnaha. Krishnaha, the word Krishna means dark, right? So Krishnaha, the dark fortnight. Shanmasa, that's the other 6 months of the Dakshinayanam. The earlier one was Uttarayanam. They go through Uttarayanam. Here it's the Dakshinayanam. And Tatra Chandramasa. Okay, following this dark path of lunar light and attaining it, the yogi returns. So the person keeps coming back again and again because he's following the dark path. And why is he following the dark path? That is also something which we have analyzed it. But next week, when we start the class, I will actually go into a little more on this mechanics of what does it mean Uttarayanam versus Dakshinayanam. Because that part of it needs to be definitely explained in the context of where we are. So we'll stop it at this point. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. Sarve Santu Niramayaha. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhagavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Stop this.
Namaste. Hari Om.
Thank you, sir.